listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. This podcast is all about expanding the conversation around infidelity. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are cheating on their partners make decisions that are truly right for them. On this show, we feature tools and guidance from my coaching practice and advice from other professionals whose work pertains to the sometimes complicated business of human romantic relationships. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Danielle Savory. Danielle is a master's certified coach and pleasure expert who helps women use their largest sex organ, which is their brain, for better sex and a more pleasure-filled life. The host of the It's My Pleasure podcast, Danielle weaves together her background in neuroscience, her expertise in mindfulness, and her skills as a coach to help women rewire their brains and connect with their bodies for an empowering approach to their sexuality. To learn more about Danielle and her work, go to daniellesavory.com. And as usual, this episode is brought to you by me, Marie Murphy, PhD. Yeah, I provide shame-free, blame-free, non-judgmental relationship coaching, and you can talk to me about the things that seem too messy or weird or stigmatized to share with your best friend or your spouse or even your therapist, including but not limited to matters related to infidelity. To learn more about me and how we can work together, go to mariemurphyphd.com. Danielle, it's awesome to have you here.
I am stoked. Let's do this.
Awesome. Okay. So let's start by talking about what it means to work on our mindset around sex. What does this mean to you, and why is it so important?
It is so important. I really honestly feel like this is the missing piece out of most people's sex life, right? Like we think about sex, we're getting down, we're getting dirty, we're doing the things, we're spicing it up, whatever that may be. And we don't think about what's going on in our brain. And what's going on in our brain has a huge impact, right? Because where in our brain is where we're interpreting all of the things that are happening out in the world. Like your partner leaving their mayonnaise knife in the sink again, or not taking out the trash, or like whatever it is, right? And then we have these thoughts about it. We're like, he doesn't respect me. He doesn't care about my time. He does blah, 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 blah. And that's going to have an impact in your body, a physiological effect in your body that's going to have you leaning in or leaning out. Like this all matters, and that's just in our relationship with our partner, but our mindset also in the beliefs, we've all, if you've grown up in this country, in the United States, like the patriarchal system that we've grown up into is going to have a major impact on how we relate to our sexuality as women. If we're in our bodies in a celebratory way, or if we're in them in a shameful way, or a judgmental way, or a critical way because of the beauty standard we've been brought up to, how we really look at ourselves as being objects of pleasure rather than, beings that can experience pleasure on their own. These are all mindset things that block us from really being able to connect with our body. And then on top of that, totally unrelated stuff, right? If you live a busy life, I work with a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs and other coaches, and they might be, parents too, or taking care of family members, or, all these other things that we have on our plate, and how that impacts our nervous system, how that impacts our stress. And so using your mindset even to relate to your life frees your body up physiologically so that we can tap into that part of our nervous system that has that yummy, delicious pleasure available to us. So mindset is really that piece that we should be paying all of the attention to when it comes to sex, because it's what is going to, again, I said, have you leaning in or have you leaning out? Have you feeling resentful, or have you feeling like that ooey gooey, like love and excitement and desire again? Like it all happens in our brain. And when you start to work on your mindset, in a number, like in even just one of these areas, just with your relationship, or just with yourself and your self-image, or just with your, our system that you grew up on around sexuality, you're going to start unlocking more and more ways to tap into your body in a pleasurable way. And it's going to have the biggest impact long term.
Yeah, for sure. Amen to all of that.
Yes.
And obviously this is the podcast primarily about infidelity, but this stuff applies to all of us, even if cheating isn't part of our experience. But before we get into some of the general applications, let's talk about how this can be important when we're cheating and when we're, say, maybe coming from a primary relationship or a committed, supposedly monogamous relationship where the sex has, quote unquote, not been good for a long time, or maybe has been non-existent in the relationship for a long time. And then we meet, so-and-so, and something magical starts to happen and the sex is amazing. And it's like, how do I make sense of this? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love when you just started off like right with it's like, oh, well, it's not that good or it hasn't been good for years. And if that's true or if that's not true, when we're going into wanting a different outcome, when we keep telling ourselves the same narrative or the same story, like it's been so bad, it's like always been awful, right? Perhaps you have been telling yourself that story. Perhaps there's some truth, but telling yourself that story isn't going to help you move forward.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you. Yeah.
Let me interrupt just to emphasize this point. This is really important, everyone. Like when we tell ourselves something like the sex was never all that great between me and so, or like they don't, want to do the things that I want to do, or they're not interested in sex anymore. Yes, there may be some factual, non-negotiable truth in that, but more often than not, this is a narrative that we've created that isn't 100% true.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's play the devil's advocate. Let's say that it isn't true. Seeing your storytelling about it is going to perpetuate that to be more true, because as we know, of confirmation bias of the brain, when we are approaching something and we start having a story about it, then your brain is going to look for all the evidence to support that story.
Yeah.
So you're going to go through and your brain's going to find all these little golden nuggets that's like, oh yeah, but remember that time that wasn't good. And let's see, I bet it's going to be bad this time. And then you actually create the result of it being bad again. So you're never creating this space because your brain is stuck in this rut that this is the way that it is. It actually doesn't want it to be different. Your brain doesn't want it to change. Yeah. So it's going to find evidence to keep fueling this story that it's really bad. So that's our first step, right? Is seeing that we're stuck in this rut. It's so bad. It's always been bad. And being like, okay, brain, that might have been true, but I'm learning the ways to see how things could be different.
Yeah.
And I actually want to create something different here. We have to start opening up ourselves to the possibility that it could be good, that it could be better than our brain is telling us it has been.
Right. Let me just jump in and paraphrase something that you're saying in a slightly different way. So what, Danielle is getting at here is that if we have this idea that our partner doesn't want to do the sexual things that we want to do, or our partner doesn't want to have sex, or our sex life is bad, the more we start to tell ourselves this, the more we start to believe it. And the more we start to look for evidence that this is true. And when this becomes true and familiar to us, it may be really weird to consider that something else is more true. And moreover, we may not know how to have the kinds of conversations with our partner that would allow us to figure out what's going on with them and learn that something else is actually true.
Yeah, because the way that we're approaching it is it's fact. And so when you believe it's a fact that your partner doesn't want to do a certain thing with you, right? And you're believing that, then how do you show up in a relationship with your partner? I had a client going through this exact same thing. And it was what was happening with her when she started to see the story that she was telling. I was like, how do you show up? She was like, well, I pull back. I don't want to talk about it. I don't even want to initiate sex.
Yeah.
I get kind of resentful of him. I think about other people. I go into fantasies. Everything that it created from this story was creating the exact disconnect from her partner, the curiosity that could have happened, the openness that could have happened, and even the availability for her to actually have a conversation, because when we have created a story, this is the way it is, we're the ones that aren't available for a conversation anymore. We can't even show up with an open mind or curiosity because we're like, nope, that's just the way he is, or that's just the way my partner is. They don't like this stuff.
Yeah.
So we close off and pull back.
Yeah.
And never actually get to open up that conversation.
Right. And we don't even know that we're doing it. We think it's happening to us.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's what I love what you said too, is like, then if you go outside of your relationship, you're like, oh, this is so exciting. And this is all this stuff. And it feels like that desire is happening to you.
Yeah.
It feels like the excitement is happening to you, the lust, the passion, when really it's still your brain having thoughts that are just very different than the ones that you're having about your primary partner.
Yeah, totally. Now, let's just clarify one thing for everybody who's listening. As we've talked about on this podcast before, we tend to think that other people create our feelings. We tend to think that what other people do or don't do creates our feelings. We tend to think that external circumstances create our feelings. And sometimes it seems like this is what's happening. Like when we have these really potent experiences in life, it does seem like this is the case. And so and also none of us are taught otherwise for the most part. I certainly wasn't until I encountered coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But just because it seems that way, just because it seems like other people make us feel things, doesn't mean that's actually what's going on.
Not at all. And it's I think it's so challenging when you start to realize that, or you start to see, because when I'm working with my clients, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is that the immediate place that we go is like a place of judgment of ourselves and shame, right? Of ourselves. Like, oh, well, if I'm really the one in charge of my feelings and they're not, then all of a sudden we've been blaming these outside things. All of that blame gets internalized. And then we shut down even more. And then it's like, we don't even know what to do because we're like, it's my fault and I'm to blame now. And it just becomes this, shitstorm of shame. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear.
You can say whatever you want, as long as it's almost whatever you want.
Yes, the shit word is okay.
You can say
shit. It's like the shit storm of shame. And we get stuck in this shame spiral, which again isn't the compassionate and loving place to create connection with ourselves and also to create that connection with our partner, if that's where we're wanting to go.
Yeah. Okay. Two things that I think are really good there that I want to point out. One is that, like, yes, I see this happening too all the time. And what we all have to recognize is that we're all just these like creatures making our way through life, having these experiences, like believing that other people create our feelings and then judging ourselves for when we know that we're actually creating our own feelings, and it's all okay.
Yes, like, it totally is. It's a human experience.
Right.
And it's like, that's why so much of my teachings and my coachings and my practice, I really consistently have to like harp on the functioning of the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to like, this is actually a brain thing, because as women, I think in particular, our go-to is to self-criticize, self-shame, feel the guilt, feel all of these things. But when you
Men
start
do it
to
too.
see, yes, everybody, right?
Everybody does it.
But I think that, a lot of times, even for women, it can be extra because we really feel like we have to, the way we've been socialized, right? The way we've been socialized to take care of that stuff.
Yep.
And so when you start to understand this is just the human condition, this is the human brain, this isn't a you thing, it's a human thing. It's our first step in being able to have a more compassionate and accepting and understanding relationship with ourselves, because you're like, oh, it's not me. I'm not alone. I'm not isolated in not seeing this thing or wanting to blame other people. And you can immediately just feel your shoulders relax away from your ears. And that's what we get to start the healing. Is that's what we can just be like, oh, there's my brain just being a human brain again. Okay. And from that place of non-judgment, that's when we can have those open conversations with ourselves and with our partners from this place of like acceptance and curiosity.
Definitely. Totally. 100%. The other thing that I just don't want to I want to make sure we don't lose that you mentioned, is this matter of choice.
Mhm.
And, on the one hand, something I see a lot is that, folks lose the capacity to engage in their relationships in a way that's open to possibilities rather than just looking for confirmation that what they already believe is true.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to figure out how to say this like in the most
Yeah.
sort of like open-ended way possible here. One of the things I always point out to people is you get to choose. Like if you're at a
Mhm.
crossroads in your relationship where you're not sure if you want to stay with your primary partner anymore for whatever reasons, maybe it's because you've been cheating and you think that like there's that relationship or those relationships are better for you or whatever the reason is, like you get to choose if you want to re-engage in your relationship in a different way and take different responsibility for how you're showing up or not. Like you don't
Mhm.
have to do that. But the point is that often there's a great opportunity there. Maybe
Mhm.
not often,
Yeah.
at least sometimes there's a great
Yeah.
opportunity there to say, like, well, if I've been unhappy in this relationship, what can I take responsibility for in a different way? And what'll
Totally.
change when I start showing up from a totally different mindset,
Mhm.
with a new sense of responsibility for what I have the power to change.
Yeah. And I think, even what you said, yes, we always have a choice, but when I'm working with clients, one of the things I like them to get to, that stay or leave place. Do I stay? Do I go? Is I always think that it's worth it for us to come back and see what it is that we can do to
Yeah.
get to a level of satisfaction before we make that choice.
Yep.
Because, sometimes it's like that choice is made so reactively, right? Like
Yes.
everything's bad. It's never going to be fixed. It's like out of this place in our nervous system where we're really in this, fight, flight, or freeze type nervous system where we don't actually have access to our prefrontal cortex, our problem
Right.
solving place. But
Right.
when you can
Right.
calm down and you can just give it some time and being like, right now, I'm not going anywhere. Right now, I want to see what I can do, what I can take responsibility of to make it better. And then once you feel better, right? Because it's like learning the tool to feel better in any relationship is going to serve you whether you stay or whether you go. So if
Yes.
you get to a place where you're like, it's actually good and I still want to go, you're going to feel so much better about your choice than you get to a place where it's like, it's so bad, I just have to go. Right.
Yep.
It's like when I
Completely.
talk to clients, when I used to teach in the corporate world, and I was like, just getting to the place where you're satisfied with your job before you choose to leave. Like, give yourself that feeling and the tools and the traits that you're going to create by empowering yourself to create your own happiness, regardless of the person, so that if it's this person or somebody else, you always have that tool that you're in charge of it and you know how to do it because it's just going to keep following you if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Like learning how to find contentment is such
Mhm.
an important skill to cultivate, and
Yes.
even, and like I also respect people's choice to be like, look, I choose to leave now without
Yeah.
doing the work of re-engaging in a
Yeah.
relationship. Like that's okay too. But
Yeah.
knowing that this option is on the table, I think
Right.
is so important. Like knowing what you're choosing, like being
Yeah.
conscious of what you're deciding to do and recognizing that it is a choice is what I think
Right.
is important.
Right.
But even like, say you choose to just get the heck out of a relationship, knowing that that's going to be your work going forward is to like,
Exactly. It's still
yeah,
your work.
yeah,
It's still your work. It's always
yeah,
your work, right? Is learning because it's like if you start dating again and you still think that the new person is in charge of making you happy or
right,
sexually pleased or all of these things, then the cycle is going to continue because
right,
you've never learned how to create this for yourself. So even if you
right.
do choose to go right away,
Yeah.
knowing that that's like some of the work that you're going to want to do anyway, every person should do that work to not feel dependent on other people for their happiness.
Right. Exactly. And that's, I see this sometimes with people who have left a relationship to be with their affair partner. And they're like, oh no, like the same thing is happening in this relationship. Like it was really good for a while. And now I'm seeing signs that it's not as good as it once was. And it's like, that's not a sign that anything's wrong with you or with them or with love or with commitment or, all the things. It's just a sign that like, you got to get clear on what you're expecting from this and what you're creating in this.
Yeah. And I think that's the key is what we're creating, because again, we look at these things as happening to us, like love happens to us, desire happens to us, pleasure happens to us, happiness happens to us. And we take our, agency out of the picture. And like coming back to this place of self-agency, like I can always create the kind of relationship that I want when I learn how to do that by my own self-agency and taking a look at like, what is going on in my brain? What are my thoughts that's creating me to feel frustrated or creating me to feel whatever XYZ in whatever relationship.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Let's get into the specifics of this because this applies like across the board. And one of the things, you go ahead. Why don't you say like, some specific examples of like what this can look like in practice. And I have one that I just talked about in a recently recorded episode, but you might even like say it before I do. So you can go first.
Yeah. Well, I just want to specify, what do you mean by like actual and practice, like a mindset, like what type of example, like sex or relationship wise or what?
Yeah. So like you're in a relationship, you've been together for a while, you're committed to each other, but like, oh my God, like they don't take the trash out. Like they don't like do the nice things they used to do. Like we never have like those like romantic moments anymore. And like, oh, like they never initiate sex or like they didn't vacuum the way I thought they should have or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always like to think about it, coming back to, Byron Katie has this quote, like every time we argue with reality, we lose, but like only every
only
time
100%
or something
of the
like
time.
100% of the time. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing to always come back to in this is like, when we start shoulding on our partner, right? We're like, they should, whatever. That's just the manual that you have running through your head of like how you think they should be behaving. Yeah. And then you're letting their behavior dictate how you feel.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, well, if you blah, 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 then I will. Right. So it's like, if you take out the trash or if you remember my birthday and bring me all of the flowers, then I'm going to feel really loving towards you. Then I'm going to have the sex with you. Then I'm going to feel appreciated. And a lot of the things that we're looking at, and this is where I think sometimes we can go wrong in traditional type of couples therapy is because we're basically asking somebody else to fulfill our needs instead of fulfilling our needs our own and looking at our person as somebody there to just love.
Right.
And their job is there like so we can just, love them. And when we start to insert all of these standards and expectations and manuals, it's really harming us.
Yeah.
And so of course you can make a request like, hey, do you mind? Right? We're not saying you never ask your partner for things, but you get to decide. It's like, what is the end result that you want? The end result that I want to feel, typically, like I've been in a monogamous relationship with my partner for 18 years. Like that's no, small pickles. It's a really, really long time. And always there's stuff coming up. But my goal is to feel connected. Right? I want to feel connected. So I can ask myself sometimes, we always have this joke, like, is that a battle you want to pick? Like, pick your battles, right?
Yeah.
Is that really a battle? Like, is it really worth it? It's like, I can just look at like, oh, that's my husband being my husband and do this more neutral thing that allows me to feel more connected versus resentful of that person. And that is going to allow already I'm not blaming him. I'm not getting mad. I'm not getting frustrated because I'm catching it at this point of like, oh, okay, that didn't happen, and I can decide like, is your partner taking out the trash or not a deal breaker for you?
Right.
Like
Right.
really looking at it as if it's this deal breaker. And, when I first started doing this work, I had young kids, I was under a lot of stress, fatigued, really tired, mostly in that reactive part of my nervous system. And it kind of was like that arms across your chest, like, yeah, but he should help
Yeah.
out more. And I don't feel appreciated and all of these sorts of things. And it's like, it doesn't even matter at the end of the day if somebody, I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't make as big of an impact as we think being appreciated by our person because we get so reliant on it. If there's ever a lapse, maybe they're going through something and they need the nurturing and then you don't feel it. So learning how to fulfill so many of your own feel, like if I want to feel appreciated, then I need to appreciate myself. I
Mhm.
need to love on
Right.
myself. I
Right.
need to fill up my own bucket. And when you come from that place where you're already compassionate with yourself, you're already understanding, you're processing your own emotions, then your person really does get to be this added bonus. The metaphor I like to think about it as is like if you go into like an abandoned like house, right? That's all like boarded up and there's graffiti and there's like mildewy carpet and all of that stuff. That's usually the relationship we have with ourselves. We're being critical, we're beating ourselves up, we're not appreciating ourselves, we're not taking care of ourselves mentally, heart wise, physically, all of these things, right? So we're basically like this abandoned house, but we want to feel better at it. So we're reliant on somebody to deliver us flowers. And then we just sit next to these flowers and we're like soaking in the smell of
Yeah.
these flowers. But guess what? Flowers die. And then you need another
Yeah.
delivery of flowers instead of working on fixing your damn house. Like fix your house.
Yeah.
Flowers are so great to get, but you're not dependent on them to feel comfortable in your house. You're not
Yeah.
dependent on a delivery of flowers. And that's how it gets to be in a long-term partnership where you learn how to create these own feelings for yourself and about yourself. Then the compliments and the appreciation and the helping out, those get to be added bonuses, but you're not reliant on them to feel good. And when you're being this loving person, because you're loving on yourself, when you're being more appreciative of yourself, and you become more appreciative in general, like when you start having acceptance and compassion for yourself, that bleeds into more acceptance and compassion for your partner.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
you will just notice like so many women, they're like, yeah, but they need to blah, blah, blah. But when they start doing even these little small changes, they notice a huge change in their partner because who you're being creates a different dynamic, the
Right.
energy that you're giving
Yes.
off, all of these things. And all of a sudden, that connection that you're really wanting happens, but it's because you're doing your own work internally.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Agree with all that. And the thing that I always tell folks is like, you're allowed to have whatever preferences you want. Like, if you believe that your partner should bring you flowers every day or take the trash out every day without you asking or whatever it is, like, you can have that preference. But the problem is that, like, you may find a human that you love very much who doesn't fulfill those preferences. So ultimately, you get to decide, is this preference serving me?
Mhm,
Because usually, like you said, we think that by someone doing certain things, we get to feel a certain way. And
mhm,
when we know that's not how it works, that we can create our feeling state. And that, yes, it's okay to have like, expectations for a relationship. It's okay to have deal breakers. It's okay to have preferences. The question is like, you know, which preferences are ridiculous attachments that don't really serve our highest good, and which preferences point to our true north? Like,
mhm.
like what you were saying about, standard couples therapy. There is so much cultural messaging out there that makes it sound like a relationship is all about your partner doing certain things for you.
Mhm.
and that it's bad if they don't do those things. And so it's not unusual for us to believe this, but the question
Exactly.
is it serving us to believe that this is how things
Yeah.
are supposed to be?
Is it getting to that place that we really want to? If we really want to feel loving and connected, like,
Yeah.
is it getting us to there? And if the answer is no, it's like, that's what we ask ourselves. Like, is this such a deal breaker that I'm ready to get out of this relationship? Because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, you can't make somebody do something.
Yep.
Like, we are grown ass adults, and
Yeah.
it's just like your person, like, making you, like, I expect you to wear matching bra and panties
Yeah.
every single day. Like, that's my
Yeah.
expectation. We would
Yeah.
just be like, middle finger, like, absolutely not. Yet we have our own whole honey-do list, right?
Right.
And really
Right.
looking at these and just being like, this isn't what creates love.
Yeah.
This is not what creates passion either. And I think that's why, at the beginning of relationships, we haven't inserted our manual yet onto our partners. And so we don't have this push pull of, it feels so electric and so fun because we haven't, like, put in, well, now I have all these expectations of you and you're not
Yeah.
fulfilling them. And then that creates that disconnect, that creates that diminishing. You're not now thinking, oh my God, so sexy. I can't wait to feel his hands all over me. You're thinking like, you don't respect my time. Why were you 4.5 minutes late from coming home from work when I have a
Yeah.
crying baby?
Yeah.
F you very kindly, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So two things that are totally radical here that I want to emphasize. One is that, and I don't think I've talked about this on this podcast much yet, but the notion that we get to decide how we want to feel and create that feeling state no matter what.
No matter what, every time.
Like this
Yeah.
is, this is one of the things that I think coaching is uniquely good at teaching folks and helping people do. And what could possibly be better than that? But what could
Yeah.
possibly be better than understanding that we have the power to create whatever feeling state we want to experience with our partner?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't
Yeah.
want to say this, like, I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, think that we're pushing feelings away or pushing
Right.
down feelings.
Not the
And I'm
point.
not saying that at all. Like, usually how it works is, let's like bring up Valentine's Day, right? This stupid commercial holiday, right? That we have all these expectations because of commercial holiday of what our partners should do. And you don't even realize it, but you have these expectations. And then your partner comes back and, like, throws you like a $1.99 Hallmark card that's like, I love you, babe. And that's it. And you're just reading it and you just feel it sinking in, that, like, it's like makes your body hot. You kind of feel like this caving in of your chest, and it's like disappointment. I'm
Or
not saying
elation.
right.
If that's
right.
what you're expecting, it's good.
Right. But let's just say it's not, right?
Okay,
You're like,
right. It's
you
not
could at
good.
least
you wanted
write
a Ferrari and you got a $2.99 card.
you wanted to be taken out to dinner. You wanted maybe a whole long note written in there, not just like, love you, babe, but like a note,
Right.
with some, like, you are this, and I appreciate you. You wanted to hear those words. You had taken time. You just had different expectations. So you're
Right.
feeling this disappointment sit in. What we're not saying that all of a sudden after the disappointment is there, that you should just push it away and be like, this is fine. This is so great. I just love him so much. It's not that. We have to understand as human beings, if the feeling is already there, you want to meet it. You want to meet it with love. Like, of course I'm disappointed. I had, like, thoughts that created a totally different level of expectation. And as a human being, that wasn't met. Of course, I feel disappointed. But notice how I said those words wasn't, he disappointed me.
Right.
It wasn't my partner disappointed me. It was, you're acknowledging that your brain created expectations that weren't met. Of course. Right. But look at this person that I have. I'm so, and then it's like, well, what do you need to think at that time after you've given yourself space to feel your feels?
Yep. You don't have to rush to feel fine.
No,
Yeah.
you can be disappointed. You could do whatever. And then it's like, but I want to feel connected tonight. That is your goal. So what do you need to think to feel that connection. Like, oh, well, maybe I just didn't, talk about it, or they didn't know this was a big deal to me. Or perhaps, it's like, I'm so lucky. Like, I remember Valentine's Day ago that I was alone and this person is here and they did remember me. And maybe they're not the best gift giver, but they're effing hilarious. And I love hanging out with them. And you can immediately help remind yourself of these reasons that is going to create more love and connection. Uh, and there's the disappointment. And also there's appreciation and love. And that's what we can do with our mindset and our thoughts.
Yeah, totally. Love that.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned a few moments back that I don't think I've talked about on the show yet either is the manual and what the manual is. And the thing that I love the most is you talked about like when the manual tends to come into a relationship and that it usually doesn't come in right away. So tell us all what the manual is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, I've heard it explained in multiple different ways. And really the way that I like to think of it is it's really just this invisible guidebook that we have in our head of how our person should be. Now, when we're first starting to date somebody, we usually have a couple of things with a manual, right? Like, maybe you don't want your person to be just a complete asshole, like totally misogynist. Like there's a couple things that are just like, those are just standards, right?
Yeah.
But then we start creating all the other things like helping out around the house and cleaning up this or doing that, like all these other things. But it's not usually there when we're first dating. We're getting to know, we're curious, our brain is more focused on all the things that are great about them.
Let me just jump in and say that this can be extra true if you're having an affair, because it's like, there's not only is this person new to you, but there's this level of like danger and excitement and all that other stuff that, just amplifies the new person effect. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm glad you inserted that. Right. And so it's like, whether it's the affair or it's the dating of somebody new, but it's like the rose colored glasses. And so even earlier, when I was talking about that confirmation bias of the brain looking for evidence, it goes to the positive too. And it's usually at the beginning, the confirmation bias is rose colored glasses. This is amazing. This person is great. All of these things. And we see all the evidence. And then as the brain starts to get used to the newness, when we start to fall into the, what I just want to say, kind of just the normal everyday, right? This doesn't become as novel anymore to the brain. We start looking for other things. We don't have that, confirmation bias all the time where our brain is just being flooded by like juicy, lovey, sexy thoughts. It starts to be thinking about dinner time, right? Or being on time somewhere where even if that was actually happening before, you might not have noticed it because of these other things going on. So the manual is like this whole list of basically your expectations of how other humans should be. You can think of like an old auntie or granny, right? It's like grandma's expectations when you're a little girl, like little girl shouldn't do this, little girl shouldn't do that. Take your elbows off the table, why are you wearing ripped jeans? Like you can hear other people's manuals, but in relationships, we also have these manuals where it's like, of course, do we wish everybody would show up the way that we expect them to? For sure. And they don't have to, right? And so it's like, even when I hear people, sometimes I think one of the things that's really hard is like, oh, they're disrespecting me. Like that's stating the weather. Like, no, that's your idea of what disrespect means. That is not a set in stone thing. And when we break ourselves from this mold of a manual and realize that these aren't facts, these aren't truths of the world, it's your interpretation, it's your beliefs, then you can start to like pick and choose, like, this is a preference. This is actually like, you have to be this way, otherwise, or we're done. Right.
Right. And again, like the choice is always ours, but when we decide how we want to feel, when we decide like what kind of relationship we want to experience, like the quality of relationship we want to experience. And when we know we're in charge of that, or at least the dominant driver of that, then everything changes.
Exactly.
And then, it's like if like, sure, maybe you really like to get gifts on Valentine's Day. Maybe you really do want a Ferrari for Valentine's Day, but you're not like, oh my God, like, since I didn't get this means that my relationship like isn't going to work.
Yes. It's like what we make that mean, right? Oh, they're doing this and they're not like being respectful. Like I remember when my husband and I first moved in together, and on Sundays, like I wanted to clean the house. I was like, let's get ready for the week. Let's clean the house. And he doesn't watch a lot of sports, but like he loves to watch like his one football team. And I would be like, we need to clean the house. He was like, okay, but I'm watching football right now.
Right.
And I remember just being like, F you, this is like our house. You should be more involved. All of these things. Like my manual was that if I decided we were going to do something, that he needed to drop everything he was doing. And like Hustle 2 is like, babe, I'm happy to help clean the house, but I'm not doing it right now.
Yeah.
And really learning that it was like, oh, but that's my manual, that there is a way, and growing up Sunday mornings, you cleaned. That's not his manual. That was my preference. And that's not a deal breaker. And that's kind of, a silly thing, but those kind of things that happen all of the time, that we're inserting a manual, and then it would ruin my whole day because I felt like he didn't care. He didn't want to help. He didn't appreciate my time. Wait, great. Now I'm just the person to clean the house, when really none of that was being said. He was just like, but I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it I'm not going to do it today. This is not something I'm going to spend my Sunday doing.
Right. No. And this stuff like over time, these things aren't small. They become really big to us because we make them so. And over time, I mean, this is like, I don't mean to be too dramatic, but it's a desire killer. It's a relationship killer. It's just, yeah.
I mean, I see these type of things, ruin marriages, and then you insert kids, and then you have a manual about how everybody should be, so much of your happiness becomes dependent on whether another person is behaving in relationship to your manual. And when you start dropping the manual and just decide, like, if this is so important to me, I could do it myself, right? Or I could get somebody to help, or like, this isn't my person, because I really do want somebody that does all these things. Like, again, we always have this choice, but it's noticing how it makes you feel when you think your partner should be doing something and they're not. How does it make you feel? And do you want to feel that way? Because that feeling is your choice.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard this too, but as they say, should feels like shit.
Yep.
And that's true when we apply it to ourselves, but it's also true when we think it about other people. When we think other people should do things, it does not feel good for us. No. And it doesn't make them do anything.
No, they're usually like, absolutely not. Right. Yeah. Just like I said, like if we started getting shitted on all the time by our partners, how good does that feel? Like, how much do you want to be, a victim to somebody else's manual? And I think the fear
to somebody else's manual.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that the fear comes in, though, is like, if we don't do this, or we don't have these expectations, then it's just going to be this like lawless, like anarchical sort of relationship. And that doesn't happen. It's actually the opposite, because you have that love and that compassion and acceptance at the root of your relationship, that you're happy to do more things. You're happy to be in collaboration with someone and on the same team as them, instead of like this nitpicking back and forth all the time.
Yeah, totally. I think there's such an interesting resistance to trust and desire for control that so many of us get into.
Yes.
But when we can release some of that control and surrender to a little more trust, it's like, oh my God, I start to get all the things that I thought I was going to get from clinging to for dear life.
Yeah. Which is so interesting. You said that control and that trust, right? Because when you've brought up like the appeal of the fair before, it's not certain.
Right.
It's dangerous and we
Yeah.
don't have control. And this is
Yeah.
actually the type of things that feel exciting.
Yeah.
Yet when we fall into long-term relationships, those are the first things that we want to eliminate. We want to eliminate, like we want to make more certainty. We want to be in control. We want to whatever, all the things that actually were the opposite that created desire when we first started dating that person, we're doing the opposite things.
Yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true how we kind of grab onto one or the other, like sometimes sort of haphazardly. There's not a clean logic to it.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Danielle, it's been so amazing talking with you. I would love to thank you. I would love to wrap up by asking you, since you know this is a show dedicated to expanding the conversation around infidelity. Can you tell us about a time when you've been unfaithful to someone, maybe yourself, maybe another person, or to something, maybe an ideal or maybe a commitment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me think about that. I think that for me, it I didn't share too much about my own story, but when I got into sex coaching, really it was like I was at a very dark period of my life. I had a lot of chronic pain and health issues, and I had to quit working, and I was actually bedridden for 2 years, and I was trying to find this, my husband and I were trying to get pregnant. I had lost 2 pregnancies. Like it was just a really, really dark time in my life with my body.
Yeah.
And I felt like my body was like the biggest enemy. And at the same time, I loved my husband, like I loved him and I wanted to be with him. And I had so much like guilt and shame and putting so much blame on myself that my body was keeping me from being the kind of woman that we had been in a relationship and the kind of woman that I wanted to be going into now being married. And I remember so many times just being unfaithful in the fact of like saying yes to sex, saying yes to like, I'm desiring, being more of this place of performance based for him. Right. And that we might say that's not unfaithful, but it was very unfaithful because it's dishonest.
Yeah.
It's dishonest showing up like, yes, I can't wait and oohs and the ahs when really in my head, I'm like, this hurts so effing bad. Will you just finish?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like this heartbreaking thing. And that's really what brought me into this work is there's so many women, it might not be body pain wise, right? But that we feel this pressure and this need, and we do have this desire for connection with our partner, that we aren't being fully honest about what we want, how we want it. We're not even connected to our bodies and our own desires and feel comfortable enough expressing those. So we fall back on what we've been taught as women, right? Which is we're objects of pleasure and to keep our partner happy. And it's like, that's really what propelled me into this work was that disconnect that I felt between my own desires, my own body, who I was, because I was more concerned about keeping this relationship intact. And it wasn't honest. But it took me noticing that and feeling that heartbreak and feeling like this isn't going to work. And I don't want to just be this empty vessel showing up. I want to be here, mind, body, heart, desire, passion, all of that. And that took me coming back to seeing my own, my worthiness of my own pleasure, my worthiness of my own connection and love. And that was, I'm so grateful for that time because it brought me now to this huge body of work I've been doing forever. And most importantly, it brought me back home to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I think, one of that story like touches on so many important things, but one of the things that I think is so important for all of us to remember is that being in alignment with ourselves or in integrity with ourselves is an ongoing process. It's not like we find it, we stay in it. And sometimes we have to like experience some disconnect in order to realign
come back
or
home.
Reintegrate. Yeah. Come back home.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Danielle, it's been such a pleasure. Can you remind everyone who's listening where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a podcast dedicated to it's my pleasure. So helping you, really start to identify the things holding you back from your own pleasure and taking ownership and empowerment over your own pleasure. And you can find that on any podcast. You can find me on my Instagram. I have a lot of fun on Instagram, making some entertaining reels and posts and all those sorts of things at daniellesavory.com, or excuse me, at Danielle Savory is the Instagram handle. And then, of course, on my website, daniellesavory.com. And that's where my group coaching program that I work directly with women doing this kind of work is.
And I bet, even though you work with women, I bet your podcast is still really applicable to folks who don't identify as women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's for everyone. And I say that at the beginning, like, even though I'm talking for women, it's really for everybody, because what you understand is that mind-body connection, the importance of the brain, and how we can help ourselves overcome that.
So important.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much, Danielle.
Thank you.
Thanks
what a fun conversation.
Yes, this was great. Thanks to all of you who've been listening. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we hope you'll head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.